Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The rain came down like God himself was weeping. I remember standing at the edge of that dirt road, somewhere between Austin and nowhere, watching the sky crack open with fury. My car had died 3 miles back. The engine just gave up, like it knew something I didn't, like it was trying to warn me. I was 26 years old. Alone and soaked to the bone in the middle of Texas hill country. My name is Emma Wallace, and I had no idea that the next hour would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family, my father, and the kind of blood that runs through my veins. I saw the farmhouse through the sheets of rain. It sat low against the horizon, weathered wood, a rusted tin roof that sang under the downpour. There was smoke curling from a chimney, and a single light glowing in the window like a heartbeat. I didn't want to knock on a stranger's door. Every instinct told me to wait it out, find another way, but the thunder was getting closer, and the temperature was dropping fast, so I walked. Each step felt heavier than the last, my boots sinking into mud that seemed determined to swallow me whole. When I reached the porch, I hesitated. The door was thick, painted red once, now faded to something like dried blood. I raised my fist and knocked 3 times. For a moment, nothing, then footsteps, heavy, deliberate. The door swung open, and I found myself staring at a man who looked like he'd been carved from the land itself. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the world. His face was weathered, lined with years of sun and wind and something else, something harder. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they studied me, like I was a riddle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. He said nothing at first. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said, my voice shaking from the cold. "My car broke down a few miles back. I just need somewhere to wait out the storm." I paused. "Please." His jaw tightened. I watched his gaze move past me, scanning the road like he was checking if I'd brought trouble with me. "You alone?" he asked. "Yes, sir." He held my stare for a long moment, then he stepped aside. "Come in, you'll catch your death out there." The warmth hit me like a wave. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the walls. The room smelled like cedar and coffee and something faintly sweet like honey. "Thank you," I said, my teeth still chattering. "I really appreciate this." He didn't respond, just walked to a cabinet and pulled out a wool blanket, tossing it toward me without ceremony. "Sit by the fire. I'll make some coffee." I wrapped the blanket around my shoulders and sank into an old leather chair near the hearth. The heat seeped into my bones, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. I watched him move through the kitchen. His movements were efficient, practiced, a man who'd spent a lifetime doing things alone. "I'm Emma," I offered. "Emma Wallace." He froze. It was subtle, just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. His hand hovered over the coffee pot, and his shoulders went rigid. Then he turned slowly to face me. "Wallace," he repeated, his voice different now, colder. "From Austin." My stomach tightened. "Yes, how did you know?" He didn't answer my question. Instead, he just stared at me with those storm cloud eyes. And I watched something shift behind them, something that looked a lot like pain, wrapped in barbed wire and buried deep. "Your father," he said slowly. "Richard Wallace?" The mention of my father's name sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the rain. "Yes," I said carefully. "You know him?" He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. "Know him." He turned back to the coffee pot, his hands gripping the counter. "Yeah, I know him." The silence that followed was suffocating. I didn't understand what was happening, but I could feel it. The temperature in the room had changed. The warmth from the fire suddenly felt like it was keeping something at bay, something dark and old that had been sleeping in the walls of this house. "My name's Jacob," he said finally, still facing away from me. "Jacob Mercer. This land, what's left of it, belonged to my family for 4 generations. He turned then, and I saw it clearly, the grief, the rage, all of it simmering just beneath the surface. "Your father took it from us." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" I shook my head. "No, that's not possible. My father is a real estate developer. He builds communities. He helps people." Jacob's laugh was hollow, bitter. "That's what he tells people, isn't it? That he's building communities, creating opportunities." He walked toward me slowly, each step deliberate. Did he ever tell you how he gets the land for those communities? I couldn't speak. 15 years ago, my father was dying. Jacob's voice cracked, just slightly. Cancer. The medical bills were drowning us. We had to take out loans just to keep him comfortable in his final months. He paused. Your father knew. He knew exactly how desperate we were. He stopped a few feet from my chair, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't read. He came to this house, stood right where you're sitting now, and offered to buy our ranch. Another pause. 800 acres. Land my great-grandfather cleared with his bare hands. Land my grandmother is buried on. I felt sick. He offered us a fraction of what it was worth, said it was the best we'd get, said no one else would touch a property with that much debt attached to it. Jacob, I didn't know. I swallowed hard. I swear I had no idea. My mother didn't want to sell, he continued, like he hadn't heard me. She said she'd rather die on this land than give it away. But my father, he was so tired, so broken. Jacob's voice dropped. He signed the papers 3 days before he passed. The fire crackled between us. Your father subdivided most of it, built those little cookie-cutter houses all in a row, named the development Mercer Hills. He shook his head, like it was some kind of tribute, like he was doing us a favor by putting our name on his profit. Tears burned in my eyes. I thought about my childhood home, the sprawling estate outside Austin, the private schools, the vacations, all of it. Suddenly felt dirty. This piece here, the farmhouse and the 20 acres around it, was all we managed to keep, Jacob said. My mother fought for it, took her to court, nearly killed her. His voice softened, but she held on long enough to die in her own bed. I was crying now. I couldn't stop. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. Jacob didn't accept my apology. He didn't reject it either. He just stood there, caught between the past and the present, looking at me like he was trying to figure out what to do. With the daughter of his enemy, the storm outside was getting worse. Thunder shook the windows, and the lights flickered once, twice, then held steady. You can't leave tonight, he said, his voice flat. Roads will be washed out by now. I can try to call someone, get a tow truck. Cell service is dead in weather like this. He moved toward the window and stared out at the darkness. You'll stay in the spare room. We'll figure things out in the morning. I wanted to argue. I wanted to run, but where would I go? So I stayed that night. I lay in a narrow bed in a room that smelled like lavender and old books. The walls were covered with photographs, black and white images of people I didn't know, but somehow recognized, farmers, ranchers, families standing proud in front of this very house. Jacob's people, the Mercers. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, that confident smile, those assured words about building a legacy, about creating something that would outlast us all. But what kind of legacy? Was built on broken promises and stolen dreams. I thought about my mother, who had died when I was 12. A car accident, they said. But I remember the months before she passed, the arguments behind closed doors, the way she looked at my father sometimes, like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize anymore. Had she known? Had she discovered what he really was? The questions gnawed at me until dawn, when I finally emerged from the spare room. I found Jacob sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee steaming in front of him. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Storms passed, he said, without looking up. Roads should be clear in a few hours. I sat down across from him. Can I ask you something? He raised his eyes to meet mine. Go ahead. Why did you let me in? I leaned forward slightly. You knew who I was, didn't you? The moment I said my name. He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know for certain. Not at first. But Wallace isn't a common name around here. He paused. And you've got his eyes. I flinched at that. Then why help me? Jacob set down his coffee cup. Because I'm not him, I'm not your father. His voice softened, and you were cold and scared and alone. Whatever sins Richard Wallace committed, they're not yours to carry. Something broke inside me when he said that, some wall I didn't even know I'd been holding up. But I've benefited from them, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Every comfort I've ever known, everything I have, it all came from what he did. I looked down at my hands, to you, to others like you. Jacob studied me carefully. Is that guilt I hear or something else? I don't know anymore. I buried my face in my hands. I thought I knew who my father was. I thought I understood my life, but now, my voice cracked. Everything feels like a lie. He reached across the table and, to my surprise, placed his rough hand over mine. The truth has a way of doing that. Over the next few hours, something unexpected happened. We talked, not about the land or my father or the wounds that still bled between our families. We talked about simple things, the weather. The horses Jacob kept in a small stable behind the house, the books on his shelves. I learned that he'd never married, that he'd spent his 20s traveling, trying to escape the shadow of what he'd lost, that he'd come back 5 years ago, when his mother got sick, and never left again. "This place is all I have left of them," he said, looking out the window at the rolling hills. "Sometimes I hate it," he paused. "Sometimes I can't imagine being anywhere else." "I understand that," I said, and I did, more than I expected to. When the roads finally cleared, Jacob offered to drive me back to my car. We rode in his old pickup truck, the engine rumbling beneath us like a living thing. The silence between us was different now, softer. When we reached my car, he got out and looked under the hood. 20 minutes later, he'd fixed whatever had broken, and the engine turned over with a grateful cough. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." He nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "What are you going to do now?" I looked down the empty road, toward Austin, toward my father, toward the life I'd always known. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I can't pretend anymore. I have to confront him." I took a breath. I have to know the truth. Jacob's expression shifted for a moment. I thought I saw fear there. "Be careful," he said. "Men like your father don't take kindly to being questioned. They protect their secrets at any cost." "I know." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "My number if you need anything. If things go sideways, you call me." I took the paper, my fingers brushing against his. "Why would you help me after everything?" He looked at me for a long moment, and something passed between us that I couldn't name. "Because I see something in you," he said quietly, "something he doesn't have." He paused, "Something good." I drove back to Austin with those words echoing in my mind that night. I confronted my father. I found him in his study, surrounded by blueprints and contracts, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when I entered, that practiced smile spreading across his face. "Emma, I was worried. You didn't call last night." "I was stranded," I said, "at a farmhouse in the hill country." I held his gaze. "A place called Mercer Ranch." I watched his face carefully, watched the smile freeze, then crack. "What were you doing out there?" "It doesn't matter how I got there." I stepped closer. "What matters is what I learned." Silence. "Jacob Mercer told me everything, Dad." My voice was steady now. "The land, the loans, the way you preyed on a dying man and his desperate family." My father set down his glass slowly. "You don't understand the complexities of business, Emma. There are always losers. That's just how the world works." "Is that what Mom thought?" The words came out before I could stop them. "Is that why she was so unhappy before she died?" His expression turned cold. "Don't bring your mother into this." "Did she know?" I felt tears threatening. "Did she know the kind of man she married?" He stood up from his desk, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father as he truly was, not the successful businessman, not the loving parent, just a man, hollow and hard, who had traded his soul for profit. "Your mother," he said slowly, "had a naive view of the world." His voice was sharp now. "She didn't understand that you have to take what you want. Nobody gives you anything." "She understood plenty," I shot back. "She understood that some things matter more than money." I stepped toward him. That integrity, that kindness, that treating people with dignity. I paused. "Those things are worth more than any amount of wealth." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And look where that got her, dead at 42, leaving behind nothing but debts." He looked at me with disgust. "And a daughter too soft for the real world." I felt the words cut into me, but I didn't flinch. "I'd rather be soft than be like you." I walked out of that house that night, and I never went back. I didn't take anything with me, not the car he'd bought me, not the clothes from the designers he'd paid for, not a single dollar from the accounts that bore my name. I called Jacob from a payphone outside a gas station in Dripping Springs. He answered on the second ring. "Emma, what happened?" "I left," I said, and I was surprised to find that I wasn't crying. "I left everything." "Where are you?" I told him. "Stay there, I'm coming." He arrived an hour later, that old pickup truck pulling into the parking lot like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. I climbed into the passenger seat, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "What now?" he finally asked. "I don't know." I stared straight ahead. "I have nothing, no money, no home, no family." He started the engine. "You've got something," he said. "You've got a choice." He glanced at me. "You can let your father's sins define you, or you can build something different." He paused, something honest. I looked out the window at the dark Texas sky, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. "I want to help," I said. "I want to make things right, not just for you, but for everyone he hurt." I turned to face him. "There must be others." Jacob glanced at me, surprised. "There are dozens, probably." His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "But taking on a man like your father, that's dangerous work." "I know." I sat up straighter, "but it's the right thing to do." He was quiet for a long moment, then, slowly, he smiled. "You really aren't like him." Over the following months, we worked together, gathering evidence, tracking down families who had been exploited, building a case that would eventually bring my father's empire crashing down. It wasn't easy. There were threats, setbacks, moments when I wanted to give up, but every time I felt myself faltering. I remembered that night in the farmhouse. I remembered Jacob's kindness, his willingness to see beyond my name, beyond my blood. I remembered that sometimes the people who hurt us the most give us the greatest gift, the chance to become something better. My father is in prison now, and I live on Mercer Ranch, helping Jacob rebuild what was lost. Some nights, we sit on the porch and watch the stars. And we don't talk about the past, we talk about the future. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.